Pyrotechnics is proudly sponsored by Fireworks Rock and Metal magazine. 164 pages packed full of interviews, reviews and features all about your favourite genres of music. Our latest edition is available from our website, fireworks-magazine.com, or visit your local WH Smiths or McCall's. UK subscriptions are now just £32 for 4 issues. Fireworks Rock and Metal magazine, for enthusiasts, by enthusiasts.
Hello everyone, welcome to Pyrotechnics. Before we get into the usual stuff, all at the magazine were saddened to hear of the passing of both Sly Stone and Brian Wilson over the past few weeks. It seems that days don't go by without another great dying, which is getting more depressing. But everyone at Fireworks sends their love, sympathies and condolences to the families and friends of both Sly and Brian. Anyway, so welcome again to Pyrotechnics, a podcast that keeps you covered about the rock and metal world. As usual, I have my two co-hosts with me. We have the man who wields the whip, our editor, Dave Cockett. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Pete. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing?
If the answer you would be surprised.
I would.
Dave is also our resident metal expert. Also on the show is our art editor, James Gaden, who, if you've seen issue 111 that came out this week, you would agree that he's pretty damn good at what he does. And he is also our resident rock expert. Welcome, James.
Thanks, Pete. Checks in the post for that. Welcome, everybody, for another episode.
Yeah, I think we agreed on 20, didn't we, mate?
10.
Depreciation already. And then finally we have me. I'm Pete Arnett, and I'm an expert in absolutely nothing. We said that we'll get this one out quicker than before, and we have. So thankfully, no musical punishments are in store for us this time. James, you're spared the fate of Ronnie Romero.
Yes.
Dave, no Royal Republic on repeat for you. And thankfully, no Oasis will be passing between my ears. However, chaps, there's always next time, so we need to keep this going. As I've already mentioned, issue 111 landed in WH Smith and on our shelves on the 12th of June, so you can get it from them or you can get it from us. You know what to do. Head on over to our website, www.fireworks-magazine.com, and have a look at our shop. But why bother with all this hassle, people? You can get a subscription, £32 for the UK, £54 for Europe, or £68 for the rest of the world, and we deliver it straight to your door. It's a no-brainer. At the moment, we're at our highest subs count, so thank you for all your support. It appears that rock and metal ain't dead, and we aim for it to carry on with a damn strong pulse. Right, now that claptrap's out of the way, I'm going to set a question for these two. As you well know, we do a nice little quiz that these two thrive at, and they love so much. We had a comment from a listener a while back, in fact, on the last podcast, that these questions are too easy. So we're going to see if I can throw in a harder one to bamboozle the chaps. So pin back your ears, gentlemen. Here we go. Which one of these bands has had the most #1 albums in the Australian charts? Oh, I'm getting the deaf stare there from Dave. So, yeah, you've got to think Australian. So your 5 choices, gentlemen, are AC/DC, Midnight Oil, The Rolling Stones, Queen, and Nickelback. So you've got a couple of Australian bands there, a couple of English bands, and an American one. So who had the most #1s? And that's every single kind of album going, chaps. So the information for this question has been taken from www.aria.com.australia. That is the Australian chart data provider. So again, if it's wrong, you can blame them and not me. Right. As always, rock and metal music news waits for no man, and we receive hundreds of press releases a week. And here are some of the few that caught my eye since we last did a podcast. Let's see what the chaps make of them. So, Stargazer video exclusive. We managed to get them to give us their new video, which was Make a Deal with the Devil. And not a bad little tune it was as well. Crown announced a new studio album, Wonderland, set for release on August the 22nd, and that's via Frontiers. Airborne release Gutsy, their first new music in 6 years. Bruce Dickinson announces no more balls to Picasso, out July the 25th. And Orianthe announces her new album, Some Kind of Feeling. James, what do you make of them?
I don't like any of those bands, to be honest. No, it's good. It's just more quality stuff coming out, isn't it? I mean, it's nice to see Airborne back because they are a bit of a team-u AC/DC, but it's good. They do it right. You don't get much from AC/DC these days, so they're the next best thing. So if they come back and do more of that, I don't think anybody's going to be unhappy. And always good to see any sort of exclusive.
Yeah, I think we have to thank Dave for that one, actually, because I think he worked hard on that one. Go on then, Mr. Editor. What are your opinions on those famous 5?
Well, as James said, I mean, anything that sounds like AC/DC and does it well is always worth a listen in my book. It's good to see Airborne back after far too long. It's been a while since I've seen them, but they used to be insane live. Absolutely brilliant. So, and that track just sounds like typical Airborne. So yeah, bring it on. Orianthe, it's good to see that the album's finally coming out because it's been pushed back a few times. It's my understanding. Crown, another. It's debatable. It's one of those that sort of sits between: is it a proper band? Is it a studio project? Is it yada yada yada? It got a finite number of people involved, which is unlike some of them, which we've got 27 guitarists, 46 bassists, and 1,002 vocalists on this. Isn't it great? Mentioning no names. But from what I've heard so far, it's just a continuation of what they've done before. So if you like what you've heard, you'll certainly like what's coming.
Yeah.
What else was there? Memory's going. I'm getting old.
Your friend Mr. Dixon announces more balls to Picasso.
Oh God, yeah. I mean that the first Bruce Dickinson solo album, Tattooed Millionaire, was good, but I think it was a surprise outlet for him to just let off a bit of steam from Maiden. When he got to the second one, Balls to Picasso, it became much more serious. The music became much more serious. And it was a great album back then. So to actually to rework it and put in a couple of new songs for the sort of modern audience, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Bruce solo's brilliant.
Excellent. Right, well, there you go, chaps and listeners. Their views on them made quite clear. I mean, what do you think of the news as well? Again, let us know. Is there anything that we put up that piques your interest? Anything that you fancy? I mean, I've listened to the new Crown one because I actually reviewed Art Nation, which, of course, is Alexander Strandell, who's the lead singer in the pair of them. And I must admit, my fear was that they were going to sound both the same because he's got quite a unique voice in certain respects. And I thought, oh, blimey, is this just going to be a lead on from the other? But I've got to give it to them. No, they sound very different. And it is quite a decent album to listen to. So if you do get the chance, Crown's new one, like I said, which comes out on August the 22nd. It's a Frontiers release. Very good. So, yeah. Right, now we come to one of my favourite parts of the show. The guys will rant, they will vent, and they will lay the smack of down over something that has vexed them. Dave's up first, although 60 seconds is never enough for our editors, so you may need to take the timing element with a pinch of salt. However, we're going to try our best. Dave's sound off is called, Is There a Place for Tribute Bands? So this could be interesting. So let me just put 60 seconds on the old timer. There we go. Right, Dave, your 60 seconds starts now.
Is there a place for tribute bands? I think that the simple answer has to be yes. I appreciate that if you're a band, a young band, you're wanting to get out there and get your own material across. It's hard. And competing against tribute bands who will play Whitesnake covers or Deep Purple covers or whatever, it's difficult to get an audience. They'll get a ready-made audience that'll go for a night out and sing along. But there are lots of musicians in, let's say, proper bands, but we're also trying to eke out a living in tribute bands. Whilst it's not ideal, I get it. You got to put food on the table. There are some great tribute bands out there. Some actual bands have almost become tribute bands. Skinner, Molly Hatchet, etc., etc. No original members. So, whilst it's not what I'd choose to go and see, although I have over the years, I think there has to be a place from there because it keeps the music alive.
Yeah.
Blimey.
I'd go along with that. I think for me, where it becomes a bit blurred, I don't have a problem with like a tribute band to a band that doesn't exist anymore. I don't understand why people go see a tribute to an act that's still around and still touring. I don't know why you would do that. Oh, Rod Stewart's playing. Yeah, I'll go see a tribute to Rod Stewart. Well, it's cheaper, but it's cheaper because it's not Rod Stewart. That's why. So I don't really understand that. And I've seen, especially watching my friend who puts on shows around here, there seems to be this weird disconnect where he'll book an artist, and it might be, an artist who's from a big band. Like, for example, before he passed away, he had Mick Ralph's blues band. So it was like Mick Ralph's from Bad Company. And it drew a handful of people. Yeah, he'll put on a tribute to Sad Cafe or something like that, and that'll be full. I don't understand why you're not going to see like these sort of like pedigree musicians who've got big album sales behind and things like that, but you'll go see a tribute, something that's not the real thing. I don't understand that. But if it's for a band that doesn't exist anymore, if you say, oh, a tribute to the Doors or a tribute to Led Zeppelin or something like that, and they're really good and authentic, that's fine, because there isn't really, you can't go see the real thing anymore. But when it's like a tribute to Iron Maiden, why would you not just go see Iron Maiden?
I mean, firstly, is the primary driver, as you said at the beginning, was the cost.
Yeah.
And to pick up on the Rod Stewart thing, the last time I saw Rod Stewart on TV was absolutely pitiful.
Well, true.
To go and see it's hard to imagine going to see even a third-rate Rod Stewart tribute and it being worse. But I get where you're coming from, and it does seem to be odd. Sometimes you'll get people who are doing their stuff, but not saying that this is a Bad Company tribute or this is a Whitesnake tribute or whatever. They get a handful in. Yet you'll get a band that come along and say, basically, we're a Whitesnake tribute, and they're packing them out. Mm. And there's a club in town that puts on a lot of tribute acts, and it's more packed for them, regardless whether it's an 80s tribute, whether it's a rock tribute, whether it's a pop tribute or whatever. And they're packing them out. So I get from their perspective, he's pulling punters in, they're taking money over the bar. It's a win-win. And if you're a actually young, up-and-coming real band writing your own material, you've got that to compete against. And it's not going to go away, and you can rail against it as much as you like. But I think that there has to be a way to try and combine both so that one supports the other. And at the moment, I don't think that they do. Mm. Apart from you've got musicians that are in original bands that are actually in 4 or 5 tributes because they've got to pay the rent.
Yeah.
Yeah, valid points. Definitely valid points. I must admit, I think I can only recall ever seeing 2 tribute bands, and the one there was one very good one. That was Gaga when I was a lot younger. Went to see that with my mum, and then there was a Meatloaf tribute gentleman when my wife and I were courting that we went out to see, and he were bloody awful.
Well, that Steve Steinman guy, is it? He's still doing it.
No idea. But his microphone didn't work. He had to borrow the microphone of nearly every other single person, and they just couldn't get it fixed. And it was just one of those. I mean, I know that's not his fault. That's a technical error. But he was clearly letting his frustrations get the better of him with his performance. And I think in the end, we just decided that enough was enough. After he sort of swore at the sound technician, obviously quietly, but you could understand what was going on. For about the 67th time, with the microphones not working, we decided that enough was enough, and we left. But yeah, I got to admit, I'm not a great fan of them. Like you say, why not go and see the originals if the originals are still around, and leave the tributes to those that have passed away?
And it's part of it, though, is that, like you said, the originals are becoming more and more inaccessible. If you wanted to go see the Rolling Stones, for example, chances are you're going to have to go somewhere like Hyde Park, stand a mile and a half away with a pair of binoculars and pay 300 quid for privilege. Whereas you could go to your local pub, your local club, and see a tribute band at much more amenable prices. I've seen some great tribute bands over the years. Sometimes some of the names make you think, oh, I wonder what they're like. I mean, I went to see a band once called Alice in Cooperland. They were pretty ropey, to be honest. But there was another one, Gallus Cooper. They were great. Dressed to Kill were always a good tribute. Livewire are a great AC/DC tribute. They've got the succession of members that come and go over the years, but they always keep up the quality of it. But yeah, there's a place for it, I think. But we're in danger that people then just become to accept that that's actual entertainment rather than just a sideline, rather than going, see something new, something original. And that's where the problem lies for me.
There was a Guns N' Roses tribute band on once around this area, and they were playing a pub, but they were like utterly committed to trying to be Guns N' Roses, to the point where between songs they were saying, and this is a track from our album Appetite for Destruction. You're like, you're not Guns N' Roses. Nobody's fooled. They were all right, but they weren't brilliant.
Yeah. Did they come on 3 hours late just for you pretending to be Axl?
I did see a really good one. It was a touring show a few it's quite a while ago now, and it was called Whole Lot of Metal. And the reason I went to see it is because they had Tony Martin in it. They had 3 singers.
Yeah.
And it, like you said, adding musicians who were like named musicians, it sort of gave it a bit more gravitas. So I was like, Tony Martin will be in it. That'll be all right. So I went to see it, and basically they just played all the classic sort of rock and metal songs, but they had Tony Martin, and they had Matt Morton, who sang with Cloven Hoof, and he was on one of the later Phenomena albums, and they had Carl Sentence.
Yeah.
And all 3 of them were really good singers. And Tony did like a little Black Sabbath section where he did Headless Cross, and he did Heaven and Hell, and he did Paranoid. And at the time, there wasn't really any sort of Sabbath entity touring, so it was like that was as good as it got. But yeah, they were doing Bon Jovi and Motorhead and all the classics, Led Zeppelin, you name it. And that was a really good production. It's technically a tribute, but it's also a show at the same time. So it's sort of like it blurred the lines a little bit. It wasn't paying tribute to one specific band. It was more the genre. That I enjoyed. And like you said about some of them, like Limehouse Lizzie, I know they do real good business as a Thin Lizzy tribute. So yeah, there are some really good ones and some not so good ones.
Yeah, one of the things that made me laugh recently was that Gary Newman did a tour, or he was doing his tour. And at the same time he was doing this tribute act, I think they're called Humanoids, I'm not sure. They literally played nearly about 20 miles apart one day away from each other. And I was thinking, God, that's, why would you do that? Why would you play somewhere very close to where the original act is going to play?
Yeah.
It just made me laugh how 2 of them at the same time. You just think, well, absolutely classic. And like
it's interesting to see numbers for both.
Bossow's not even dead yet.
Yeah. But just thinking, did Gary Newman pull a crowd of 500 and they got 15, or?
Well, it's more than 500, but yeah, I know the point you're trying to make. It was interesting to see, but I just thought that absolutely shit scheduling from somebody to have, literally the tribute act one day apart from the main act. Yeah.
I mean, as James said, sometimes it's when you get, for example, like in Europe, they have that Rock Meets Classic that Matt Sinner puts on every year, which brings in lots of big names. Avantasia even, they bring in, sort of lots of big name singers and what have you. And but sometimes it's, when it is that, where it's more of a tribute to the genre as a whole, it does work as a show if you view it like that. It's just when you get a bunch of kids stood there trying their best to knock out a bunch of AC/DC covers or a bunch of Bon Jovi covers, and they're not very good at it. And a tribute, for me, you should try and adopt the mannerisms of bands. Like you said about the Guns N' Roses guys. They might not have been very good, but they were trying to be a tribute to it rather than a cover. There's a difference between a tribute band and a covers band to me.
Definitely.
A covers band just rock up and play songs that you know. A tribute band actually try to emulate that band, like I said, like Dress to Kill, or with all the makeup and the stack heels and everything else, the shooting the flames from the guitars. And if you ever get opportunity to see Dress to Kill, if they're still going, I think that they still are, but they're great entertainment.
So the after conversation took about 20 minutes. Dave's actual piece took 55 seconds. So, well
played.
Yeah, exactly. Right, now we have James. And underneath that cool exterior, he's like the Hulk. I don't mean green and muscular. I mean he's always angry. But what's he going to spout forth today? Well, if the title's anything to go by, it's going to be a belter. James's topic is called My Reaction to Reaction Videos. Over to you, James. Let me just put some seconds on the old timer. And your 60 seconds starts now.
Yes, I'm getting increasingly annoyed at these reaction videos on social media, YouTube, all that sort of stuff. And it's people like reacting to stuff bug-eyed with amazement. It's like this kid from the States, first time hearing Bohemian Rhapsody, and he's like, oh my God, dude, this is so cool. Yeah, no shit. Where have you been? If you've been sat listening to Kanye all this time, you've only just found Bohemian Rhapsody, don't be making a video promoting your ignorance. You just look foolish. And then you get vocal coach reacts to Dear. Oh, he was really good, wasn't he? Yes, he was. It's not news. Stop reacting to stuff that everybody already knows just for views. You can't be that stupid. Oh, 2 sisters react to the first time they heard ABBA. Who cares? If you haven't heard ABBA before now, you shouldn't be on the computer. You shouldn't be allowed anything sharp. You should be put away and educated. There we go. How's that?
That's wonderful. 59 seconds exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Can't argue with that at all. It's just it's the heightening of the look at me generation. Do anything for likes. Do anything to get themselves noticed. Even if it's, I firmly believe if you ran a competition to find Britain's daftest twat, they'd be queuing around the corner to audition for it.
I mean, some of the reaction videos serve a purpose. There is one vocal coach, and she's actually all right. She'll watch a video of a rock singer. It'll be like Ian Gillan doing Child in Time or something like that. And she isn't making out like she's never heard it before. What she's reacting to is how he's singing it, and she'll comment on his vocal technique. And there's actually some purpose to that. You know, if you're an aspiring singer, you might learn something. But for some idiot just to go like, well, I've never heard Stairway to Heaven, and then they play it and like, wow, like, fuck off.
Totally agree. I just love that. That's absolutely brilliant. And Simon Cowell, Dave's just giving you an absolute belting idea for your next hit show. Britain's daftest twat.
He might win it though.
Right. Yeah, let's move on, shall we? Our main topic today is with the absolutely superb news recently that When Rivers Meet scored a number 4 album with Addicted to You in the UK main album charts. We think this is quite an achievement at Fireworks. It's made even more impressive by the fact that Grayson and Aaron do it all by themselves. No label involved. So that got us thinking, does it pay to be independent in today's rock and metal musical landscape? Or are labels still as relevant and important as they were before for bands to survive? So I'm going to put these ideas and these questions to our 2 experts and see what they have to say. So James, will you kick us off with your thoughts about this, please?
I absolutely think it's worth being independent these days. I don't think there's much a label can offer these days that you can't do yourself. Gone are the days where you used to play clubs in the hope of being spotted by an artist, and then they'd put you forward and you'd make a demo tape, and then the label would go, oh, yeah, there's promise there. Here's X amount of money to go and make your first album. That doesn't really happen anymore. So what labels are nowadays, basically distributors. You're expected to basically take control of your material and record it all and come in with it, especially the way things have gone nowadays, where you can literally make an album at home if you want to. You don't need a big studio necessarily. So yeah, I think if I was making a record, I'd certainly look at what labels had to offer, but I wouldn't be thinking, oh, I've got a record deal now, that means I've made it, because the landscape's changed so much. And an example like When Rivers Meet, they've reached number 4 in the charts all by themselves, and they're going to reap much more reward from that than if they had a label. And for me, that's what it's all about. The one caveat to that is the level of commitment you need to have to be independent. It's essentially a full-time thing, and you're going to have to manage that really, really well. You're going to have to be on top of everything. It's not just we've made the album, out it goes. You've got to be on it on your socials. You've got to be marketing it. You've got to be booking your gigs. You've got to do all these things. And it's a lot of work. And this was almost going to be one of my rants. It was looking at the amount of newer bands who start off all enthusiastic, and then maybe after 2 records, they've split up because the drummer's getting married or the lead singer wants to have a family or whatever. You're like, you should have thought of that beforehand. You need to have a massive level of commitment to make this work. And When Rivers Meet have clearly got that. I know they're a husband-wife team, but they've obviously decided, right, this is how we're going to do it. And they're sticking to it. And it's paying off for them. So that's basically my view is if you're going to do it independently, you probably get more financial reward than if you was on a label, but you're going to have to put in way, way more work.
I mean, Dave, I'm interested in bringing you in on this for a simple reason. Obviously, you and I are a bit older than James is. And so we've sort of seen record labels, what they can do at their best, and then obviously record labels at what they can do at their worst. You know, so Dave, obviously using your massive array of knowledge on this, what is your take on all this?
You mean I'm oldest to get here, so I ought to be able to remember?
Well, I was trying to put it more politely than that, but yeah, since you're the oldest to get here, what do you remember?
Things have changed massively, obviously. Yeah. The internet, social media has given everybody a window to the world, which you didn't have before. if you were an aspiring band back in the 70s, 80s, there was nothing that the only way you could market yourself was to play live and hope that somebody would then come along after you built up a little bit of a following to sort of get positive reviews in local press, and that you would hope that somebody like John Kalodner would come along and say, yeah, you're great, we're going to sign you to Geffen or to whoever, and we're going to give you £1 million to make an album. It was very rare. It's even rarer nowadays, but that was your only way that you could do anything. You could finance your own demos. You could go in and make an album, be it vinyl, or make a single or something like that. But it costs money. You couldn't do it at home. You had to go into a studio. Lots of these little studios have got sort of engineers that didn't really know what they were doing. You come out with an awful sound, but that was all you'd got. Then the internet explosion, and certainly since the explosion of social media, that opens that window up to everybody, which is good. But the downside of that is that there's not only you, there's 10 million others also wanting to. So how do you get your product noticed? I think that the idea of doing it independently is a good idea, because there are lots of, you sign yourself over to a 3-album deal to a label, you get squat, and you've got to do all the hard work of writing the songs and getting it recorded. And these days, the budgets aren't there to put into it, so you've got to do it on the cheap. But somebody else is doing it for you. If you go down that route, and there are still labels out there that are signing these sorts of projects, particularly not so many in the European markets, at least in the melodic rock sort of sphere. There are plenty from sort of South America or Asia or whatever that are still getting signed that are clearly a bit behind the curve, because they've all of a sudden gone from there being no interest in their country whatsoever in what they're doing to this internet age. They've not gone through that gradual curve where everybody else went through, where you got your gigs, etc. But I think that if you accept that that's going to happen, you have to accept that you're not going to do all the work. You're going to be expected to come up with the music, and they'll throw it out there. But if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. They won't really try and promote it. If you're doing it yourselves, as James said, you're taking on, you're not just doing the one job, i.e. writing and recording and playing the music. You're doing everything else. You're doing 1,000 jobs. You're being your marketing guy. You're negotiating with vinyl pressing plants or CD pressing plants if you want to go down that route. You've then got to, how do I actually get this out there so that people can hear this? I can stick it up on YouTube, but there's a million videos going on YouTube today. Why are they going to pick mine? I need to have something that's going to stand out. So you need to know about influential people in the field that you might have, like some of the websites out there that or some of the podcasts that have got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views. If you can get your music to those people and they like it, then they might help you promote it, and then you might start to build some momentum. But once you do start building that momentum and you do start selling copies, it's mailing things out here, it's getting this organised. We're at an exciting stage where bands are doing this and they seem to be successful. Bands like Nesta started it, Remedy started it. You mentioned When Rivers Meet. There are lots of other bands that are doing a similar sort of thing. But there will come a point where the groundswell gets that much that they can't do it all themselves and concentrate on the music as well. So it is a bit... Whilst I would encourage anybody to go out there, try and build their following up to a point where you're going to be able to get people who can take you further interested. Because if you get to that point, you've got a better negotiating point or a better negotiating start point, rather than just coming along, sending a cassette out to somebody. Yeah, I quite like that. I'll give you 1% and we'll put you in a studio, record that and see if we can sell some copies. Whereas if you've built up a following, you've showed that you've got people coming to gigs, you've actually pressed and released stuff yourself if you're doing it physically, or you've got substantial likes and follows or downloads and listens, then it can work. But it is, as James said, it's hard work.
Do you think that chart success is more accessible? Because obviously now with the UK album charts, including streaming, physical, digital sales, which obviously allows indie rock and metal artists with a devoted fan base to chart highly. I mean, when Rivers Meet, beg your pardon, it's not just a one-off with them neither, is it? They got a number 4 this time. They've had a number 5 in the past. So it does seem to prove that no label backing isn't necessarily a harmful thing.
The one thing to that is it's easy to chart now because you don't need to sell as many copies to get in the chart. But that's not to take anything away from what they've achieved, because a chart placing is a chart placing. At the end of the day, in what is a very saturated marketplace, it's difficult to get noticed, as Dave said, and they've managed it very well. I think they're a good blueprint, really, of like, if you want to be an independent artist, look at what they did. Because I interviewed Chris Norman a while back, who obviously he was the lead singer in Smokey, were really big at one point. He went off to be a solo guy, and he had solo hits in the 80s and stuff like that. And he did like 3 albums in a row where he did everything himself. He was writing all the songs, recording most of them at home, and then he put them out without a label. And I asked him why, because obviously he's a guy who's been in the industry a long time. And he says, well, the way things are at the moment, there's not really anything a label's going to do for me that I can't do myself. I will give them the finished album. They aren't going to tell me to change any of the songs around, because I'm at a stage in my career where there's nobody who's going to be able to tell me, oh, no, you should be doing this. You should be doing... He says, I have my audience. This is what they want. There's the record. So basically all they're going to be doing is putting it out and marketing it. Well, I can hire people to do that myself, and I'll get a bigger share of the return. And that's basically the thing. If you're starting off and you haven't got an audience, then maybe a label can help you do that. But it's not the be-all and end-all that it used to be, as When Rivers Meet have proven. You look at where they are now, and they've done that all by themselves, and I think they should be applauded for that.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I think that the buy-in point, though, is getting higher for labels. They're now starting to look at what traffic you're generating, how many likes you've got, how many followers you've got. And if you've got a couple of hundred, they're not interested. You've got to be in the tens of thousands before they think, okay, there's a market out there. And I get that. From a purely marketing perspective, if you can say, well, I've got a potential audience of 200 or I've got a potential audience of 30,000, they're going to say, yeah, we'll pick that band because they've got 30,000. It's where that point, that cutoff point is. As I say, I think absolutely from the beginning, you try and control as much as you possibly can rather than give it away to somebody else. If every band had a Rod Smallwood or a Peter Grant or Bill Hawking or whatever, it would be great. They'd all be able to retire after 3 albums, sit on the millions. But life doesn't work like that. So if you can keep control up to the point where you can no longer keep control because there's too much to do, if you can find a team that you trust that will support you, that's the sort of stage that we're at now in terms of the relationship between bands and potential labels.
I think there's a bit of a problem as well with social media. I mean, we all know what social media is like. It can either make or break. Pretty much. But if you're, going by what you said, if you've got likes and followers, say you've got 30,000 likes and followers.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get 30,000 sales, though, does it? I mean, you could have 5,000 likes and followers, but get 5,000 sales. I mean, so there's, like you're saying, people tend to gravitate occasionally towards the bands with the bigger followers. Doesn't necessarily mean that those 30,000 fans are going to buy something, though, as we well know. And also, as well, there's this annoying resurgence or explosion of fake accounts as well. I mean, how many times have we been on Facebook and social media, and the actual artists themselves have had to go on and say, this is not my account. This is my only account. I'll never ask you for money. I'll never ask you for this. And then 2 seconds later, someone in another chat has complained, no, so-and-so was contacting me. I mean, there's a group called the Funeral Portrait, I think, in the United States. And the poor lead singer on that is forever putting out things saying, this isn't me. This is me. I'm never going to ask you for money. Please don't fall for it. And then 2 seconds later, somebody's put on the stream, I was approached by you on Facebook asking for $500 because your lorry had broken down in South Connecticut or something stupid. And you think, for Christ's sake, is it ever going to end? But social media can be its own worst enemy in that respect. So I think bands, I mean, Aaron and Grace have absolutely traversed it perfectly, I think. I mean, that they are a shining light of how to do it right.
Yeah.
But other bands have got to be very, very careful, because having lots of likes and followers doesn't necessarily mean lots of sales.
No, and the point I was going to make to that as well is it doesn't translate, not necessarily sales, but ticket sales either for concerts. I interviewed Shaman's Harvest, American band. I'd heard a couple of the songs that were used in WWE pay-per-views and things like that. And they've got 400 million streams to their name. and they were playing over here to less than 1,000 people. So again, on the one hand, you're like, oh, they must be really successful. Look at how many times their songs have been played and their audience is minuscule. They're not playing arenas or anything like that in the States. They're playing clubs. I'm like, so what is the point of those streaming numbers? They're meaningless. They're not getting a big financial kickback from that, as we all know. So the argument then is, oh, no, but people go to see them. Well, not according to that. It's what boils down to the playlist mentality. When the trailer for the new Grand Theft Auto game hit YouTube, it had like 200 million views or something like that. It was massive. And there was a song in it, and it was a Tom Petty song that they'd used for the trailer. I forget which one it was, one of his 80s ones. And all these like gamers went on, and they were like, what a great song, who's that? And suddenly that one song of Tom Petty's went through the roof on Spotify in terms of streams. It just shot for millions and millions of streams because they all heard this song and loved it. But you didn't see a resurgence in his albums. It was just that one song. And that's what happens a lot of the time. Is I've seen it with the lads here. They'll come up and say, oh, I've heard this real cool song and it's by this band or that band. I was like, oh, have you listened to anything else? No. That one song is all it is. It just goes on a playlist with everything else. It's like a single mentality. It doesn't translate to albums. It doesn't translate to concert sales.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. That's the disconnect. It's the disconnect between the song and the artist. Which one comes first? If they hear the song and like the song, particularly this generation, I think it's more prevalent because there's just so much choice, and you got that placement. It's like Queen have just sold the back catalogue, yeah.
Yeah.
So what you'll find now is that there'll be lots of things out there that all of a sudden Queen songs will pop up in. But Queen have got that global brand to start with, which is why they wanted to buy the catalogue, to get it out there so that they could make even more money. Tom Petty, no disrespect. Yeah, Tom Petty had his day, but he was never at a Queen level.
No.
The Tom Petty audience now is dwindling, where I think that they've recognised the Queen audience just can be kept ever growing. It's going to be one of them bands like ABBA, like the Beatles, like the Rolling Stones to a certain extent. They're going to endure. They're going to become this sort of era's Beethoven's or Mozart's or whatever. It's building that bit up to where it's the name that's recognised. The brand should be the thing. Then everything else should come off it, not things feeding down into the brand. And I think that's where the When Rivers Meet guys have cracked it. But if you look at Aaron and Grace, that's pretty much their life. That's what they do. They write, they record, they play, they market, they do everything else. And it's all When Rivers Meet. And it's difficult to imagine that they get a day off. As you said earlier, that you've got to have that level of commitment to push it to a point where you can then get other people to come in and say, okay, yeah, you've got something here. But you've then got to be savvy enough, or have got people in your corner who are savvy enough to say, yeah, okay, we'll get in bed with you, but you're not having 10%, or we're not taking 10%. We want 25, or we want 30, or we want whatever, which is where, like I said earlier, your older bands like have got a Peter Grant, or they got a Bill Hawking or whatever, a Rod Smallwood would come along and they'd be in your corner. To answer your question originally, Pete, I think, yeah, it's probably the way to go, at least initially, if you're serious about it.
I don't know if it's just our genres, obviously, because that's the ones we listen to, but there seems to be a lot more bands now asking, things like patrons and, to help fund the albums. I mean, I don't know what your opinions are on this are, chaps, and, we'll get them in a second, but I don't know. Sometimes I think, yeah, decent enough idea. And other times it kind of think, well, why are we paying for it? And does it benefit us? I mean, I know they sort of say there's different levels. You pay £100, you'll get this, and this. You pay £50, you get that, and that. It's one of those, it's a very divisive thing, because I've heard some people sort of say, hang on a second, why are we doing your hard work? And then there's other people saying, yeah, definitely get involved, brilliant, absolutely support the band, da-da-da-da-da. And you can kind of see both arguments. I mean, James, where do you come in on this?
I've got no problem with things like Kickstarter or, not so much Pledge, because that ended in disgrace, but a crowdfunding option for an album, I don't have a problem with, because if When Rivers Meet decides to do that, they know they've got a fan base there that would respond to it. For me, it's no different to a label giving you an advance. It's just the fans are giving you the advance. And I think there'd be a better use of the money if it goes from fan to artist without a label dipping into it and saying, well, you owe us for making that video and you owe us for this. And by the time you finished, you actually end up owing the label more than they give you in the first place. So in that respect, I know artists who've done like Kickstarters and things like that, and it's worked really well for them. I know artists that have tried it and it didn't pan out so well, but that also is an indication of demand. So if you want to make an album, but you can't find enough people who want to fund it, then that's an indication that if you do make it, you're going to end up in negative equity. There's maybe not people that bothered. But if it smashes its target, that's going to tell you, oh, actually, people really want this. So definitely, I mean, like, I think Ginger Wildheart did it with one of his albums, and he ended up with like 4 times the amount he actually needed, which must tell him, okay, people really want what you're doing, and now you've got even more money to do better videos and whatever else to give back, because that's the basic process. So I think in that respect, it's worth doing. There are some people who are against it. I remember hearing John Waite asked if he would ever consider it, and he went, oh, no, I wouldn't want people paying up front for an album. What if the one I made was crap? And I couldn't understand that. I was like, well, why would you release an album that you'd made if you thought it was crap? That doesn't make sense to me. But for me, if I was an artist and I had a fan base, and I'd say, look, I'm going to make a 10-song album. I want it to be out by Christmas. Pre-order it, and you'll help me make it. And if I met my target, everyone's a winner. As far as I'm concerned, the fans get the album that they wanted. I've got it paid for without having to get myself into debt. So that is the perfect scenario. It's not always going to work out like that, but I don't see any harm in it if it's done right.
And Dave, again, I'm honestly not picking on you, mate, because we're of the older generation. But again, it's a complete 180, isn't it? I mean, we used to labels throwing money at artists to make albums, and now it's artists asking fans to throw money to make an album. I mean, it's a complete 180.
It is, yeah. And you think back in the day that you'd get record labels, like you say, they'd throw £500,000 or £1 million at a band because they were hopefully confident that they were going to make that back in album sales. And really, the band that comes along and said, oh, a record label giving us $1 million or £1 million to make an album, we made it with superstars, were living in cloud cuckoo land. Because like you say, once you got all the things to claw back from it, they would end up in negative equity and they'd make nothing. And there are example after example of bands like that. I think that this crowdfunding idea that's now, Marillion were probably the guys that really started it.
Yeah.
And as you say, they went along and they got a big fan base. They got a big fan base that went right back to the late 70s, early 80s when the band started. So they built it up over years, and it had got to the point where they weren't making enough money by the normal route to be able to get enough of a record deal to put something out. So they thought, you know what, we'll turn it on its head. Let's see if and it was very successful. The problem with anything like that is that you then come along and somebody says, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll do that. And whilst if you're looked at in isolation and your favourite band come along to you and say, give us 10 quid, we'll make an album, and then in 6 months' time, we'll send you a copy. Great. What then becomes your favourite 10 bands or 100 bands or 1,000 bands or whatever? How many people's going to donate $10, $20, $30 or quid to people on that sort of scale? Everything becomes watered down. So I'll donate $10 to you, but not that one, even though I like you, because I can't afford to do it all. So it's just a slide to the bottom. And if you can get enough fans to do it, I think it's a great idea. But the more and more people do it, people are going to come along and say, well, I don't just like that band, I like that band and I like that band, but I can't afford to do it for everybody. So there comes a point where part of me thinks, well, as the artist, you're going to have to accept some responsibility to get something done to put out there to sell, rather than you give me some money and I'll make it and sell it to you. I think we're getting to that stage. There's too much of it.
Which I suppose feeds back into the social media part in some respects. If you can get 30,000 likes and followers, you've got more chance of those 30,000 likes and followers giving you the money that you need.
Yeah.
As opposed to 5,000, but then you might get the 5,000 more dedicated ones. It's a minefield. And you've got to give, again, when you sort of dig into it, you've got to give Aaron and Grace absolute kudos for what they've done, because they've navigated it absolutely fantastically.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the other things as well, I mean, do you think as well, because of the live scene resurgence that we're having, that smaller venues seem to be wanting to attract more independent artists because they know, in essence, they can fill out a smaller venue, but they can consistently fill out a smaller one, rather than saying to them, right, you know, go and try and fill out the arenas, go try and fill out the stadiums. And let's be fair, I don't think we're ever going to see an independent fill out a stadium. It's going to be very, very hard for them to do so. But the smaller venues, you know, again, like when Rivers meet, they are very, very clever at what venues they pick. And because they all seem to have a really, you know, 75, 80% capacity filled at least, which, you know, 80% of a smaller one consistently is probably better than 30% of a bigger one, you know, all the time. So is it also the live scene as well that's helping these independents by sort of saying, yes, we will support you as long as it's not, you know, massive and it's overbearing and all that lot? What do you think to that one, Dave?
I think that the picture's still being clouded post-COVID by everybody and his mother wanting to get out there and tour again. And then you get the likes of Sharon Osbourne come along and saying, give us £1,000 and come and see Ozzy maybe perform 3 songs. That doesn't help, because I forget who it was now, called them the Hoover Bands, that we interviewed a few issues ago. Called them the Hoover Bands that come along, charge 200, 300, £400 a ticket. And if you've got people that are going to pay that money, yes, it's big names from the past who, let's face it, in actual terms of sales and public persona these days, aren't that big anymore, unless you're Iron Maiden or Deep Purple or whatever, that are putting occasional shows on in these big sheds that are just so bloody expensive by the time you've factored in the ticket costs, the fees on top of those, the travel, overnight, if you go to overnight flights, if you're going abroad or whatever to see it, that people then don't have the money to go and see the little bands on a more regular basis in the little places. So it's still difficult, but I do think it's right. It's just the old adage that the only way you're really going to build up a following is to plonk yourself in front of people and play and try and impress them. You look at bands, go back to the early 80s and the rise of thrash. Metallica never used to be off the road. They always used to be playing him, and that's how they built their following. And it's tried and tested, and it still works. If you can put something in front of people that impresses them, they're going to come back and they're going to tell their friends about it. So yeah, that's a positive. It's just, I think it's harder now because there's so much more to compete against. Again, I mean, I remember the days when if you wanted to go to an arena in England, you either went to Birmingham or you went to London. There was the SEC up in Scotland, but there was nothing else. Whereas now everybody's got his arena, and people are finding that, okay, Heart did it. Heart booked an arena tour in the UK, having neglected it for years, having only ever played arenas once back in the 80s here, and then had to cancel it because of poor ticket sales. It's a difficult one, and it's knowing where to market it at and be satisfied that rather than be greedy. And I still think ultimately that you will only get a small percentage of artists come through and make any money doing their art. More likely to make money working for somebody else or copying somebody else's art as a tribute band or whatever. I just think that's the economics, that's the fact of life.
Fair point. I mean, James, you've got a mate who does put on shows as well, obviously. Yeah. In Hull. So, you know, again, same question to you. What do you have more of an insider knowledge? What did your friend tell you about the smaller bands? Again,
it depends. Like, for example, I recently saw Bonafide play here, who were brilliant, but they didn't draw a massive crowd, even though the performance certainly warranted it. But he could book a tribute band for the next night that do triple the numbers. It's weird. The people who turned up were proper hardcore fans. There were people in Bonafide t-shirts, people in Ghost t-shirts, people in AC/DC t-shirts, and they were all there. But it was like a small, compacted area for this. And when it comes to the tribute bands, I think there's a mentality of like, oh yeah, I quite like the odd Billy Joel song. I'll go watch that. You're not there because you're a huge Billy Joel fan. It's, oh yeah, that'll be a decent night out. I think there's that element there. There are certain gigs he's put on around here that have done really well. Like when he did, it was Saxon at the City Hall, supported by Magnum and Diamond Head, triple bill. That did well, as you'd expect. He's done one or two arena shows, but again, one of the arena shows he was involved with, even though there were proper artists, it was almost a tribute in how it was presented, because it was basically an 80s themed thing. It was like Culture Club, Belinda Carlisle, and I think the Thompson Twins or something like that. So even though it was the original artists, it wasn't marketed as anything more than, hey, remember the 80s? Check this out. It was like that kind of vibe to it. And it did well for that sort of thing, but I don't think you could make the argument that, you know, you got a huge turnout because Belinda Carlisle was there or anything like that. I think it was because it was a package deal. With your point for independent artists never going into an arena, I think that would be because, as Dave said, if a band starts out independent and then they move from a club and they're now playing, oh, you're in an academy now, one of the other two places, and then, oh, now you can play City Hall. I think when you get to that, then you start getting offers. People coming in and saying, see, you're doing all right. Come with us. And booking agencies and maybe start getting interested, management start. And like Dave says, it'll get to a point where you can't manage it by yourself at that level anyway. You need other people. So I don't think you could ever conceivably be an independent act like Grace and Aaron and play an arena without having a host of other people doing stuff for you. I think it's just too much. And if you've got enough clout to fill an arena, there'll be all kinds of people wanting a slice of that pie who suddenly can't do enough for you, that won't give you the time of day when you're playing clubs. But if you've got that sort of pull, oh yeah, you could fill an arena, no problem. There'll be hundreds of people willing to work with you, because that's just the way it goes. That I don't see why anybody would stay independent at that level, because I think it'd just be too much work. I think then it is beneficial to have the backing of somebody like a Live Nation or, you know, a big management company or a big label that have got all those connections already there. It makes sense. It'd be interesting to see if a band could do it without needing any of those people, but I just don't see a scenario where it'd be beneficial to stay independent at that level.
I could see a scenario where, when Rivers Meet, for example, got onto a tour that were going through arenas, but they wouldn't be headlining it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that had they got to that size, as you said, that they would then have. It's like any business. If you start off on a market stall selling fruit and veg, you do it on your own. But if you're then gradually grows and it becomes Tesco's, you obviously can't do it on your own. You need people in there. You need you only have to look at getting an album pressed. So you've got your recording done. You've got your masters. So you've got to then find somebody. You've got to find the pressing plant that will produce your CDs, that will produce your vinyl. And bearing in mind, you've got to have a different mix or a different mastering for your vinyl as you got for your CD. So somebody's then got to check that that's going through okay, that they get a test pressing. Does that sound all right? Is that what we're going to get? Then the album artwork and everything else that feeds into it. If you're doing that as you've got the time to do it if you're going to sell 1,000 copies. But if you're on something that's you hopefully is going to sell 10,000, 100,000, or whatever, it becomes more of a process, and you've got more of a vested interest in it, and it takes time that you're not going to have. Particularly if you're wanting to market it to potentially sell 100,000, you've got to get out there, you've got to do interviews, you've got to be put in people's face. So you've got to be part of that and there comes a point where you can't do everything.
No. I mean, the irony is, if you wanted to be an independent artist and really make it, you need to be a millionaire to start off.
Yeah.
To basically pay for all the marketing, all the pressing of the albums, the distribution, buying onto tours, like Dave said. So basically, you'd be spending a fortune in order to make a little bit back.
Yeah.
Which I suppose makes it even more impressive what Rivers Meet have done then.
Exactly, yeah.
Dave and I, we've interviewed Aaron and Grace, haven't we? And you know, they did say it's an awful lot of hard work, and I think we can safely say that they weren't millionaires to start off with. So to get number 4, number 5, and I think the recent album was as high as number 2 in the midweek charts as well. You know, it's really impressive to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you want to look at it from that perspective, starting with a leg up, look at the Dead Daisies.
Yeah.
Now, the Dead Daisies wouldn't exist in the form that exists in now without the backing of David Lowery. No. We all know that. You don't have to be Einstein to work that one out. Credit to the guy. He seems to be one of the most hardworking guys on the planet. Because not only has he got all the Dead Daisies stuff and the travelling around the world with them, he's got all the business things as well in the background. He's behind one of the biggest companies, not just in Australia, but in the world. He's got to the stage, I think, where obviously he's not running those businesses on his own. He's got a team of people that's below him that can be left to do a certain amount of it that he can then now put into doing something he really loves, which is the Dead Daisies. I can't fault what they've done, and they're over here. They're playing again. I'm going to go and see them in August. They're here quite regularly. They're around the world quite regularly. They're putting new music out quite regularly. Whilst it's something to aspire to, it's not really something that you can look at and say, well, we couldn't do that because we've not got that backing that he's able to give them to start with.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like when I did the Dead Daisies interview when Glenn was in the band, and Glenn Hughes and Doug Aldridge, you both said that David Lowery is basically the backbone of it. It's his money that carries them, and they were both saying how well they were treated and how the sort of hotels. So that's the lure. There's a reason to be in the band. It's like almost like going back to the old days of how it used to be. But that's because he's bankrolling it. It's not because they've sold millions of records. They've done well, no doubt about it. But yeah, without him, it just grind to a halt.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it unfairly described in certain places, the rich man's plaything, which I think is a little bit unfair. I get the sentiment. Yeah. But to just dismiss it like that, given all the work and everything that goes into it, is just ridiculous.
No, I mean, you could certainly make the argument that he wanted to live out his rock star fantasy.
Yeah.
But he could have just phoned it in by just playing rhythm guitar for a few gigs and say, well, I've done that now. But he hasn't. He's done the opposite of, like you say, touring all over the place, doing shitloads of gigs, making all these records, bringing in all these different musicians. Yeah. So, it's a real band. There's no doubt about it.
You know, when I announced this subject, I thought we're going to struggle here for time to fill. We've absolutely nailed it out of the park, guys, to be fair. But the one question I am going to ask you, so do you think, therefore, it is worthwhile being an independent if you have the time, if you have the commitment, as we found out from when we was me, not necessarily the money to back you straight away, or is it still worthwhile trying to get a label on board? I mean, James, what do you think to that one?
I would say absolutely be independent if you're committed to do it. If you're trying to manage it with a full-time job and stuff like that, then shop around for a label. But we've all heard the stories, even when labels were bankroll and everything, of how many bands got shafted by labels along the way. Yeah. So the musicians I've talked to over the years, one of the key things that comes up from nearly all of them is, I wish I hadn't signed that away. I wish I still had the rights to that. I remember when I spoke to Mike Gray, when he came back into the scene, he spent ages trying to get back as much of his back catalogue as possible. And he's got nearly all of it now. And it's his. And he's like, I wrote these songs, I played on these songs, they're my songs, but for the longest time I could do nothing with them. And that just seems ridiculous. So keep your control as much as possible. I mean, obviously, if a label came along and made you an offer you couldn't refuse, you'd be a mug to turn it down. But until that point, look at what Aaron and Grace and When Rivers Meet have done. They've got complete and utter control, and they've seen the success. They'll see some financial kickback from that they wouldn't have got with a label. And they are building momentum. They will get to a point where people will want to sign them because, oh yeah, you've built up really well there. We can take you to the next level. But I wouldn't sign myself away until that happened. I think stay independent as long as you can. Keep as much of it for yourself as possible.
There you go. And Dave, to be independent or not to be independent?
I think what you said about When Rivers Meets, absolutely right, James. And they, even if they, for the next album, decide to go with a label, or some other sort of support, they're now in a much better position to bargain than if they were coming from nothing.
Yeah.
So they can retain much more of the control. But I think independent, absolutely. I think increasingly you're going to have no choice, that you're going to have to start out like that. And if you're not serious enough about the business, if all you want to do is to get together and bang out a few tunes, that's great. You'll play Ferret Fondler's Arms on a Friday night every couple of weeks. That's fantastic. You're not going to get any bigger than that. But if you're prepared to put the time and the effort into trying to manage the back of it, do the back office, if you like, you might be able to get further than you probably would have done back in the day had a label come along. But it's still about building a following, be it a live following, an online following, hopefully both. The inevitability of it is that most of them will fail. Most of them will give up after an album or two or a few years because other things come along. They've got families to feed, so they need to get a job that pays regular guaranteed income, not the occasional 20 quid from playing gigs on a Friday night or whatever. So I don't think it's changed in that regard to what it ever was. I think that the numbers that will actually go through and make anything meaningful out of it are still minuscule. And the odds are still stacked against you, but it's not, there's no glass ceiling. It's not a no, you can't do it, because people have proven that you can. Bruce Dickinson's a prime example. Bruce Dickinson, as much as Steve Harris was, and let's be honest, Steve Harris, Rod Smallwood are the driving forces behind Iron Maiden. Steve Harris's band. He's been driven since day one, almost to the point where he willed into existence what they've actually achieved. But Bruce Dickinson were a lad from Worksop, and he was just so dedicated and sure of himself as this is what I'm going to do, that he made it happen. So I think that it proves that people like us, generally ordinary guys in the street or girls in the street, can do it. But you've got to have that dedication. You've got to have that commitment. If you're not going to go into it with that right at the very beginning, forget it.
Well, another example, other than When the Rivers Meet, would be Cats in Space.
Yeah.
You look at them, they started off independent, they worked their arse off, they've played gigs all over the place, they've built up, and now they signed with Cherry Red. And I assume, I can't speak for Greg because I haven't asked him, but I would assume that they're maybe thinking that Cherry Red might be able to distribute them a bit further than they were previously going. But they didn't rush into it. They've built up a following and got to a point where we've had them in the magazine a bunch of times. They've played gigs all over. They did that theatre tour, which was a risk for them, but it was a calculated risk. It was like, we need something different. We need to try this. They recorded a live album. They've done all these things before they got to the stage of signing with a label. And there would be another one I point out and say, look, those are guys who know what they're doing. They've kept complete and utter control of their brand, of their music. They've done their own videos. They've booked their own gigs. They've basically steered that ship to the point where now they're thinking, oh, actually, this label might be able to go a bit further. But they haven't signed anything away. They've done a really good job, much like When Rivers Meet. I think those will be two prime examples of, if you're going to be independent, there will be two of the templates to follow.
Yeah, can't disagree with that.
I mean, I suppose the only difference as I see it is that Greg had got the experience from before.
Yeah.
Cats in Space didn't start from scratch like When Rivers Meet did. But I take your point entirely. It's somebody who's been in the business and he's learned the pitfalls and how it works.
Yes.
And I think that what they're doing now is what they should be teaching bands. It's almost like there should be Band School 101. That you're going, this is how you do it, this is how you approach it, rather than you just rock up on a Wednesday night to rehearsal and we'll be playing headliners in arenas on Sunday.
Yeah.
So I think that there are lots of people out there with the experience and with the experience of what it was before, how it's progressed and how it works now, that they could almost be the role models to aim at. This is, you sit down with Greg. Okay, Greg, how did you do it? How did you, what did you find out? What went wrong when you did it this way? What went right when you did it another way? And that's the sort of lessons that because it's like anything in life, particularly in the arts. Some faceless fat cat in a suit will sit in the background and quite happily make 95% off of your work. And I think that more and more people are less naive and are realising that now. And I think that if we could get all these people together, they've got great lessons that they could teach the ones that are coming along behind them.
Yeah.
Indeed. Gentlemen, I'm going to be like a landlord now and call time on this conversation because, to be fair, despite my initial fears that we wouldn't make 20 minutes, I think we've almost made 50 on this conversation. But it does prove a point. That obviously independence can work. And if you, as James and David said, if you've got the commitment, the time, the social media knowledge and lots of other things as well, business savvy, then you can make it work. Again, drop your opinions down below. Let us know what you think. Have we missed a couple of bands? We mentioned Cats in Space. We mentioned When Rivers Meet. And just to say congratulations to Aaron and Grace as well, because it's an absolutely fantastic achievement, not just once, but twice, to get a top 5 album. So, well done to them. But let us know your thoughts and feelings about it as well. Do you still prefer the old record labels? Do you think independence should now be ruling the roost? Let us know. And to answer your question, Dave, wasn't it Fish that said about the Hoover bands?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, Pete, it was. Yeah.
I mean, that was a fantastic interview as well. I mean, he spoke a lot of sense, did Fish. So if you do get a chance to read that interview, I think it was issue 109?
Something like that.
Like that. I will do so. Absolutely brilliant interview. Right, I've been surfing the internet again, looking for the silly and the damn right daft opinions about the genres we love. And I don't know if it's because the weather has changed several times, but I've come across a few absolute belters, including this one on Threads, which, if you don't know what Threads is, it's a friendly version of X or Twitter or whatever Musk is deciding to call it today. Now, I've got a suspicion that Dave's hackles are going to rise when I say this. But the unpopular opinion from a very brave person who got pretty much slated for this was AC/DC have basically been rewriting the same song for decades and nobody seems to care. Right then, James, let Dave out of his cage whilst we run away.
Well, I remember a great quote from Angus Young, and it was phenomenal because a journalist had said to him, "How do you feel when people say you've made 9 albums that sound exactly the same?" And he replied with, "They're liars. We've made 10 albums that sound exactly the same," right? But obviously it's a joke. And no, AC/DC know what it is that their fans like, and then they have a formula. They know what they do. But the albums, while they are unquestionably AC/DC albums, to say it's the same song every time is nonsense. I mean, Back in Black doesn't sound anything like Thunderstruck, which doesn't sound anything like Highway to Hell, which doesn't sound anything like The Jack. They are a band who operate within a certain framework, but that doesn't mean every song's the same. That is simply the opinion of somebody who doesn't like AC/DC to me.
Yeah. Just hang on a second, James. I'm just... All right, Dave, your go. You go for it.
Well, it could have been my missus that wrote it because she's of that opinion that they all sound the same. I think what people are confusing, in my opinion, is that they're confusing with style. We're sounding the same. I mean, James gave you examples of 4 songs there that don't sound the same, or at least don't in my ears. But there's an argument that also says, if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Fix it, yeah.
They've got a ready-made audience out there that will buy it, and they will buy it on the basis that they know what they're going to get. It's comfortably familiar. You don't eat fish and chips once and they run to say, right, I'm never going to eat it again because it'll be the same. It's brave to stick your head above the parapet, and I think that some people do it just to stir the pot at times. But they're confusing same with style. You could level the same thing at Quo. Certainly in the 70s, people did.
Yes.
That they all sound the same. Well, yeah, if that's your opinion, it's one of those things that you almost think, well, if you don't like it, why comment? Move on. Why waste your time?
I forget the name of it, but Dave will probably know. But there was a box set of AC/DC stuff from the Bon Scott era that was put out, and there was actually a love song on it, which the band recorded and then thought, that's terrible. Nobody wants to hear us do out like that. So they just shelved it. So it wasn't like they decided, oh, we only do this now. They did try some other stuff, but it was like, this isn't us, is it? It doesn't fit. It doesn't work. So they axed it, and good for them, because really, who wants to hear an AC/DC love song? Not me.
No, you want to stick some AC/DC on. You know what you're going to get. You know what you want. You know
exactly.
What you're expecting. Yeah, I think Bonfire is what you're after.
I think it was. Yeah. I mean, it'd be the same as if I thought, oh, do you know what? I'm in the mood for some sort of Americana today. Motorhead. It's no good. It's not what you want. So,
Yeah,
same
yeah,
with AC/DC.
absolutely. Yeah, another band, Motorhead. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. These people confusing style with calling it same.
Yeah.
Every band can't be Led Zeppelin.
No.
Those sorts of bands that allowed that sort of freedom and want that creative freedom to do something totally different time after time. Yeah, I applaud them, but it's more difficult to market to an audience.
Yeah. And you get the same people, don't you? You get some people who've just complained like, oh, all the songs sound the same. And then you'll get somebody like David Bowie who goes through all these stylistic changes throughout his career. And people will go, oh, it's not as good as when he was like Ziggy Stardust, or it's not as good as when he was... And they don't like the other styles. So he should have stuck... Kiss, another example. I remember... Kiss and their makeup, blah, blah. And then they took the makeup off for the 80s, which I personally loved. I loved the 80s Kiss. And there was a load of the old diehards going, yeah, I should put the makeup back on. It's not Kiss without the makeup. And then they eventually reform and they put the makeup back on. And the same people going, yeah, just trying to recapture their youth, aren't they? Well, pick a lane. Come on.
It's the adage that you'll always get some people that aren't happy as long as their arsehole looks at ground. So... it's just, I mean, Kiss took the makeup off for Lick It Up.
Yeah.
Lick It Up's a fantastic album.
It is. Asylum's a great album. Crazy
Nights is a great album. Animalize Asylum, yeah. Great album.
Revenge is my favourite Kiss album. That's a belter for me. Probably the hardest and heaviest Kiss album.
Yeah.
Oh, well, didn't have their makeup on, so that's no good.
I mean, to be fair for me, I love these people that stick their heads above the parapet. It makes my job a damn sight easier. And I read this one, I thought, oh, that is going in, because I just knew have a little bit of an opinion on it. But yeah,
it's everybody's entitled to an opinion.
Yeah.
Right, wrong, indifferent. But I say, I do think that times that people just put these sorts of contrary opinions on just to try and provoke a shitstorm on the internet. What they get out of it, I've got no idea. As I say, in my opinion, if you don't like it, move on. Listen to something you do.
It certainly did, to be fair. I think it went on for about 51 pages afterwards. People basically saying you're an asshole. But, you know, it just made me laugh when I read it. So I thought, yeah, that one's definitely going in. So I think we can safely say that is an unpopular opinion, especially in Dave's thought as well. So hopefully his blood pressure will come down fairly quickly and we can get on with the rest of the show. We've reached the stage in the podcast where I let the chaps flush a pet peeve of theirs down the rock and metal crapper. It's a chance for them to get something off their chests about the genres that we love. And so far in this segment, we've had all sorts from packaging to Robbie Williams. So basically anything goes. And it's up to James to go first. So who knows what could happen in the next few minutes? James, I'm fearful to say, over to you, off you go.
So for me, what I'd like to flush is the rather grandly titled Posthumous Revisionist History.
And the reason being, all I keep seeing lately are people coming out with opinions about bands or artists that have just ended or passed away or whatever. And I'm like, you never held that opinion before. So, for example, when Dio passed away, all I got, all over my Facebook, was everybody raving about him and saying he was the greatest singer ever, he was the biggest metal guy ever, and this, that, and the other, blah, blah. I love Dio, don't get me wrong. But 95% of the people saying all these great things didn't have a good word to say about any of his output for the last 30 years. They were like, didn't rate that, that was no good, that was crap. And then all of a sudden, when he passed away, he was elevated to a legend. He was, well, it'll never be the same. I'm like, well, hang on, you didn't like anything he did for the last 3 decades. He was only going to seem to hear the old ones. And I've seen the same thing happen with Magnum. Now Tony Clarkin's passed. Magnum, basically, they've done some gigs to sort of say, that's it, goodbye, end of story, right? Fine. Magnum are a very good band, don't get me wrong. They made some really good records. But I'm seeing stuff now of people commenting, it's like, oh, the greatest bands the British Isles ever produced, Queen and Magnum. And I'm like, oh, just wind your neck in, calm down. Magnum's biggest album sold 100,000 records. Thunder have done that twice. You know, Magnum, as good as they were not that big a deal. If we're going to be talking about like a Mount Rushmore of great singers, Bob Catley would not be on there, as good as he is. If we're going to be talking a Mount Rushmore of great British songwriters, Tony Clarke would not be on it, as good as he was. They were very good to a certain amount of people. They were never superstars. And the idea that the comments I've seen on social media, it's like we'd lost the Beatles and Led Zeppelin in the same day. It was like, it's Magnum. Let's just calm down. It was a shame. They were very good. End of. I see it with when artists die and all of a sudden all their albums start charting. Why are you buying them now? Why not buy them when they were alive, when it would have done them some good? How big a fan can you have been if all of a sudden you want to buy their albums now they're dead? I don't understand it. I think people, all of a sudden, when somebody dies, completely lose focus and change their opinion in order to not, I don't think, maybe not seem disrespectful or something like that. As you mentioned, I flushed Robbie Williams down the crapper a few episodes ago. If he were to, God forbid, die in some sort of crash or something like that, I wouldn't suddenly be then saying, oh, he was bloody good, wasn't he? What an entertainer. I loved him. Because I didn't. I'm not going to suddenly change my opinion just because he's not here. So I think people just need to calm down a little bit and stop elevating people to these lofty plateaus just because they've ended recording or passed away or whatever. And just remember them for what they were and not something that they weren't. Okay,
yeah. All Magnum fans and Robbie Williams fans, James is available for personal appearances. Just write to and we'll make sure you can book him. Yes, the ethos behind your points, James, absolutely smack on. It does seem to be we have a lot of contradictory people that when somebody dies, greatest thing since God knows what, and then when they're alive, nobody cares. So, yeah, I get that one, yeah. So, yeah, we'll send that swirling away. Again, listeners, let us know your comments. Is James right? Is there a sudden unnecessary outcrying of, oh, these lot were wonderful once they're not here? Or is it just a load of baloney? Dave, it is your turn now, so we'll get you wound up and let you go.
Okay. I'm going to, my flush it down the crap is going to be an extension of what we talked about last time. I'm sum it up in 2 words. Sharon Osbourne.
Oh, dear.
She's always been a media whore anyway, for want of a better description. But I'm sick of seeing pictures of her plugging this. She was on, somebody posted a picture in a bloody Villa shirt the other day, or holding a Villa shirt with Ozzy on. And after all the work, she ain't the prettiest thing to look at, but that's by the by. But then it's just the whole cynical aspect of everything that's now coming out. Oh, you can't get to Villa Park to this. Pay 25 quid and stream it. No, I don't think I'm gonna. It's just anything to put money in coffers that are already overflowing. And it's just got to the point where I'm sat there thinking, fuck's sake, woman, enough. Go away. So, yeah, flush Sharon Osbourne down the crap.
And then flush it again to make sure.
Yeah, we just had to point out that obviously these are the views of the individual, not necessarily the magazine as a whole. But I kind of agree. The attacks on Sharon Osbourne, not forthwith, but the streaming thing. My God, I mean, I heard that as well. 25 quid to stream it. I mean, I would have been interested probably if it was $9.99 or like that. I think £25 is absolutely scandalous. And like you say, Dave, where is it going? I mean, that's the main thing you've got to sort of ask yourself.
That's absolutely it. Well, show me a set of accounts. Is 50% of this streaming fee going to charity?
Mm.
If you can prove that that's what's going to happen at the end of it, you show me a set of accounts. This is how much we made. This is how much we're going to charity. If the proportions are enough, I'll stand up and say, yeah, Sharon, you did a brilliant job. Thank you. But it ain't going to happen.
The language that's used, all the proceeds, they haven't affixed a number to it. It's the proceeds. So it's very easy to make sure the proceeds are very small once you've deducted all these expenses and these expenses. So, yeah, that doesn't convince me at all.
Proceeds of what?
Exactly.
Ticket sales, T-shirt sales, beef sandwich sales, cup of Bovril on the day, the undoubted DVD, album, tour shirts, whatever that's going to come out as memorabilia after the event. Is it a percentage of those? And it just seems to me somebody, let's say, has looked at it and thought, we can make some money at this. I'd like to know how much Tony Iommi's going to get paid, for example. How much Bill Ward's going to get paid. how much geezers going to get paid. I don't care about the Metallicas and whatever and how much they're going to get paid. They'll get the kudos out of being at this event. But how much of that is actually going into the Sharon Osbourne coffers? And it seems immoral to me, the whole thing.
Well, I mean, we discussed this last podcast, didn't we? But
yeah,
I think we're not alone. And that's the funny thing. I mean, I've watched a few other podcasts. I've listened to various other experts in our field speak. And a lot of people have actually said this. So, you know, there does seem to be genuine concern out there. Now, we're not saying that, you know, that anyone's filling any books, that anyone's doing anything they shouldn't do. You know, we're not saying that at all. And to be fair, the people that go, we hope have a really good time. We hope it's a great success. We really, really do. And above all, we hope it raises lots of money for the 4 charities I think that they've named.
Absolutely.
But as we've pointed out as well, and as other people have pointed it out as well, it doesn't kind of seem that it's as what it seems, if you know what I mean. There could be some hidden agendas, should we say, hidden areas that, like Dave says, are we going to see the books? Are we going to get told that so many millions or whatever went to charity? It will be interesting to see if that does happen. But for those who do go, we really hope you have a great time. For those that stream it, we hope it's superb. 25 quid, it's a little bit too rich for my pocket, I've got to admit. So, you know, like Dave says, will there be a DVD coming out afterwards? I suspect he's probably right. And we'll have to wait and see. But, you know, let's see what happens after the event, shall we, chaps?
I don't even think it'll be a DVD, Pete. I think what you'll get is a DVD of highlights of the day. Then in 2 years' time, you might get a box set deluxe DVD with two DVDs in it that show you more highlights of the day. And then give it a year after that, there'll then be the super deluxe version that's got all 15 fucking hours of it or whatever. Over 8 discs at 150 quid a shot.
You've forgotten the remastered one.
Well, on top of that, just to sort of add to the idea that it's all about money, you can get a meet and greet with the Osbournes at a convention. They're all going to be there, and you can go up and have your picture taken with the family and, like, just talk about wheeling Ozzy out for one last time. Is it really? It's just, no.
You're not wanting to put too fine a point on it. It's like a chimp's tea party. It's cruel.
Yeah.
And steady on with those lawyers. Right, moving on. But yeah, valid points again, Dave. That's definitely going down the crapper. There's no doubt about that. Again, listeners, let us know. Drop your comments in below. Is Dave talking twaddle or is he talking sense? I know which side of the fence I fall on with that one, but, you know, let us know your opinions. That's what we want, a good debate. Right then, it's my favourite time of the show because these two look so happy when they do it. Yep, it's the lyrics game. Oh, you can always smell the excitement from the pair of them. At least I think it's excitement. Don't let them fool you, peeps. They absolutely love this. Right, Dave, you are up first.
Okay.
Here is your first lyric. Here in the afterglow, we'll never let it go. All we can do, nowhere to talk about it. Old fires will always fade. The only constant left is change.
No idea.
Oh, come on. It's our favourite group. It's the Domino Effect by Threshold.
Okay.
From Dividing Lines in 2022. Right then, second one.
Tell how many times I've listened to that since 2022 then. Unfortunately.
Right then, Mr. C, your second one. Without warning, I fell down the bottomless well. Fresh is calling, need to claw my way out of this hell.
Sounds Alice Coopery, but I'm not sure. No, still not sure, Pete.
You told me to listen to these lot.
Did I?
Yeah.
That could be anybody.
Well, that's true, to be fair. Night Terror by Dream Theater.
Right, Dream Theater. Okay.
Parasomnia, 2025.
Uh-huh.
Oh, this is going
Was there enough hours in the day to sit and learn lyrics? I'd go on Chase if there was.
Yeah, okay. Right, I'm afraid to ask this one. Bonus question, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Damien Wilson has been Threshold singer a few times, but which album marked his return in 2007?
Crikey.
That was the third track off the second side, I think.
Yeah.
Of course, you remember that I said that these guys were the experts in their fields at the beginning.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm quite happy to get egg all over my face, Pete. I can't think. Not Dead Reckoning.
It was Dead Reckoning.
It was Dead Reckoning. Yeah. I was just trying to think when Mac left, and yeah.
Are we going to be kind and let him have that? Because he did say it, James. Are we going to be?
It's fair. I wouldn't have known, so I'll give him that.
There you go. Well done, Dave. Right then, James, are you ready?
No.
Excellent. Here come your two lyrics.
Bring it.
Lyric number 1. Down in flames like a spade in a spin. Riddle me this, girl, I'm wondering. How did I get from the rock I was to the mess you see?
I haven't got the faintest idea on that one.
You should have, because I think you bought the album a couple of days ago. Well, you told me you had anyway.
You've not listened to it yet?
Give me a check. What was it?
Avalanche from Winds of Change by Jim Petrick and the World Stage.
Oh, yeah, I've had it about 48 hours.
That's long enough for a professional like you.
No, when I was out last night, so no, not really.
I thought you said you were singing it on karaoke as well, or was that a different one?
I sang Vehicle by the Ads of March. They didn't have any Jim Petrick solo stuff.
Fair enough. Okay, lyric number 2. What kind of trouble would you like to get in? Think it over and I'll ask you again. Only take what I need, never any more. Then I'll ramble on, a troubled troubadour. I'll give you a hint. You reviewed this.
Oh, well, that narrows it down to about 400 albums. No, pass.
Hell of a Good Time by Joanne Shaw Taylor from Black and Gold.
Again, right, this is the one downside to writing for Fireworks, right? We get that many albums. It takes me ages to get to know them. Because, you know, as soon as you finish playing one thing, you're playing another thing. Then you're playing something else. And then I'm doing an interview Monday, so I've got to listen to that album. So gone are the days when you used to get to sit and listen to albums and get to know them.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
So, in about 6 months, I might have got that lyric. But again, I've not had that album very long.
Well, I'll ask you again in 6 months. Then.
Nice one.
Right, bonus question, James. Jim Petrick co-wrote Heavy Metal for which iconic rock vocalist solo project?
Sammy Hagar.
Boom! Smack
that
off.
One I know.
Brilliant. So out of a possible 3, you both got 1 each. So
that's a plus.
Well,
that's an improvement.
I was gonna say, it's better than none.
Exactly. Oh, God. Before this madness started, I asked these two a quiz question. Now, they've had time to bounce it around the old bonces. Hopefully, they're going to come up with the answer. At the moment, James is in the lead 3-2, so who emerged triumphant today? I know, the suspense is killing me as well. So just to recap the question for these two, it was, which of these bands has had the most #1 albums in the Australian charts? AC/DC, Midnight Oil, The Rolling Stones, Queen, and Nickelback. And as I said at the beginning, the information from this question has been taken from the Australian chart data provider website. So if it's all totally wrong, it's their fault and not mine. So, Dave, come on, drop your knowledge on us. Which one do you think?
Now then, my heart says AC/DC. But Nickelback, have they been, they've had, 10 dozen albums out. Are they big enough for? They've been big enough for long enough. Queen, stop it. Midnight Oil. There you go. That's just pure guess, to be honest, Pete.
Well, they are an Australian band, so you never know. James, same question to you. Obviously, who out of those famous 5 do you reckon has had the most #1 albums in the Australian charts?
I'm a little bit gutted because when you started with the question, you went, which of these has had the most #1 albums in Australia? Immediately I went, it's Jimmy Barnes. And he's not one of the options. So.
No, he wasn't.
No, but he is, as far as I know, he's had the most #1 albums in Australia, but he wasn't one of the options. So out of the ones you gave us, I don't think Midnight Oil are big enough. And I don't think Nickelback are big enough. So that leaves me with AC/DC, the Stones, and Queen. I went with the Stones last time, and they paid off for me. but I don't think it's. I'm going to go with AC/DC.
That was my gut feel. But
I was going to say it was Dave. Right. Just as an aside, apparently it was the Beatles that had the most number ones in Australia.
Yeah.
But like we said before, because they're not really our genre and rock and roll and all that malarkey, I discounted them. Okay, so James's choice, AC/DC, which, to be fair with you, James, and as Dave has also pointed out, I actually would have thought were this as well. They've had 6 number one albums, so very in the Australian charts. Midnight Oil, who I only remember for that one song, which was Beds Were Burning, I think, aren't they? Yeah. They've also had 6 as well, so that was Dave's choice.
Oh.
Queen, who obviously, big fans of, James and I, they've had 9. Nickelback, you both did well to avoid this one. This was the booby one in some respects. They've only had 5. So it comes down to the Rolling Stones. Have they had more than Queen? Yes, they have. They've had 10 number one hits.
See, I should have stuck with the Stones, like I said, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I blame Dave.
Default answer, James, every time.
I was going to say, if I can't have the Beatles, I'm just going to say the Stones.
Oh, I know. It's surprising. I must admit, I went with you, James. I thought AC/DC as well. I thought, obviously, being the nation.
You said that, I'm thinking, but obviously AC/DC are beloved all over the world. So when you think of how big a band they are, it's not just Australia, is it?
So yeah, no, I would have chosen exactly the same. But yeah, no, the Rolling Stones with 10, Queen with 9, AC/DC and Midnight Oil with 6, and Nickelback with 5. There you go.
Pyrotechnics is proudly sponsored by Fireworks Rock and Metal Magazine. 164 pages packed full of interviews, reviews, and features all about your favourite genres of music. Our latest edition is available from our website, fireworks-magazine.com, or visit your local WH Smiths or McCall's. UK subscriptions are now just £32 for 4 issues. Fireworks Rock and Metal Magazine. For enthusiasts, by enthusiasts.
Right. Finally, we've reached the end of this Odyssey. But before we depart, just a quick reminder that issue 111 has hit the shelves at WH Smith's and is also in stock on our website. Printed copy $7.99 plus P&P and the digital download for $5.99. You know what to do by now. Head on over to the website, fireworks-magazine.com, look in our shop, choose the format you want, and be very, very happy with your purchase. I've been Pete Arnett, and it's now time to say goodbye to my co-host. So goodbye, Dave. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us back again, Pete. Keep enjoying the music, people. Keep reading the magazine, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Indeed. And also, James, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining us once again. See you next time.
And as Dave has said, keep on enjoying the music that you listen to. That's why you listen to it. And above all, everybody, take care and see you all next time.
All views heard in this podcast are from the individual and do not necessarily represent those of Fireworks Rock and Metal Magazine.